Back in the days when people used to live in caves, estimated probably about 30,000 years ago, people didn't have wallpaper. They would paint things on cave walls. Way back about 3,000 years BC, there was very ancient religions, and times were hard then. There was plagues, pestilences, drought, floods, crop failures, rivers silting up. Life was really hard then. They must have been desperate to improve the situation. They believed in gods would look after them. Probably found that spilling water on something, they had a good harvest that year, so thereafter every year they'd sprinkle the water on like they did last time, because it seemed to work, and then a message gets passed on, and then everybody starts doing it. Then there was the Babylonians. Famous person in Babylonia was Hammurabi, who introduced a code of laws. Of course, the Egyptians were quite lucky. They just so happened to live right near a load of gold, and they built these things, pyramids. And in Roman times, this is when philosophy began. It began in the open air. Around a city square, people would gather together and invented this thing called philosophy. You teach each other lessons in logic and rhetoric and the art of persuasion. That old saying, when in Rome, do like the Romans. Well, the Romans had given us roads, architecture. The Aztecs, not much is known about the Aztecs. They only lasted about a century. They were a bit bloodthirsty. In Australia there is the Aborigines. The Aborigines, they believe in a supreme being, to which they've given a name. Different parts of Australia, they give different names for the supreme being. It's called Gurunderi among the Lower Murray, South Australia. Incidentally, the word kangaroo is actually an Aborigine word for I don't know. And there are the Maoris, the indigenous people of New Zealand, very spiritual people. Here is the inside of a Maori meeting house. All along the walls are carvings telling ancestral stories. Everything and everyone understood to have an essence, a Maori. Over in North America, 1492, by the time Christopher Columbus arrived, the population exceeded about 100 million, probably about 300 distinct languages spoken. Each tribal group had developed its own distinctive culture, its own mythology and rituals, all specific to living in harmony within their local environment. By about 1600, the native population had declined a lot because European diseases such as flu and diphtheria and smallpox. There was about 20 epidemics that all swept through them, decimating the population. This is ruins of a Native American village. Successive waves of immigrants surged westwards and flowed over traditional native gardens and hunting grounds. But the people were still forced to migrate from their ancestral lands, and many died along the Trail of Tears, which is only now beginning to be mourned and commemorated in art, literature and song. The loss of land and the relocation for someone who are in unity with the land, it would have been their relationship through the land. Since the 1960s, resurgence in the culture coming back and being rediscovered. This is a powwow ceremony. It's a competition from a tribe, and here they are re-establishing a native way of life so that it doesn't become forgotten. Here, a modern rain festival in Nigeria. Shinto is a traditional belief system of Japan. It's got no fundamental creeds or any written teachings, and it's not particularly evangelical either. Shinto is essentially a body of ritual to relate with a thing called kami in a way that's respectful, warm, open and positive and vibrant. So this local festival, which this is a picture of, some Matsuri, has become so much part of a social life and enshrined so much social Japanese morality and social behaviour that participation in them seems so natural, common sense, good neighbourliness, and being part of being Japanese. Kami is not necessarily the same as God. They're invisible and countless. Shinto focuses upon them that reveal their importance to people. Particular kami are identified with the kitching, safety on the roads, education. Others are identified with places, especially forests or mountains, natural phenomena. In Shinto, there's no teaching about the original creation of the universe or about any future end or any final judgment. Likewise, there's no clear description of any afterlife. After a person dies, they simply merge with their ancestral karma and have no individual soul as taught in Buddhism or Christianity. Shinto shrine is a good place to pray, hope to get a good job, or that you are recovering from an illness. Here are printed prayers ready written out. Rather like in the West, we buy greetings cards, get a printed prayer. At around 500 BC, Buddhism is based on a recognition of four noble truths, that is, the fact that there is suffering, the cause of suffering, and the fact that there is a way out of suffering, and the way itself. As a way out of suffering is quite simply to cease to do evil, learn to do good, and purify your heart. The oldest form of Buddhism is the Way of Elders. It's being hardly unchanged at all from the 3rd century BC. It's found throughout Southeast Asia. In the metta, or loving kindness meditation, they practice the suffusing of all beings and thoughts of well-being and loving kindness. May all beings be well and happy is the traditional phrase. All being include those we love, those we like, and those we dislike, beings other than human and ourselves. Zen Buddhism is very similar to Tibetan Buddhism. Zen has had an impact on all aspects of Japanese life. There's the so-called martial arts as well. Traditional training, the essence of it is that it's not to hurt the opponent, but to resolve the conflict in the most harmonious way possible, which often leads one party backing down without even a blow being struck. In spite of persecution, especially over the last 70 years or so, Buddhism is still one of the world's most major religions. It's got a significant presence in most countries in the East. In around 1500 was the beginnings of the Protestant churches, and here we have Martin Luther addressing his congregation. The talker had to stand on a box, on a pulpit. They did not have microphones and PA systems then. And here is John Wesley, who founded the Methodist Church in the 18th century. After John Wesley's death, the Methodists broke from the Church of England and then broke again into smaller churches. The most famous probably being the Salvation Army, founded by William Booth in 1861. The Religious Society of Friends meet in a place called Friends Meeting House. They're also known as the Quakers. Quakers are about 300,000 in the world today. They are a non-violent, non-sacramental people who worship largely in silence with no fixed order of service. There are no priests and no celebration of communion. It is a constant search for truth. They believe they are spirit-directed. They believe in a one true deity. Meeting places are usually very sparsely decorated. The windows are usually out of sight for when you're sitting down. They're higher up in the room. There is not much furniture.